We are so glad that you all have decided to spend some time with Kentucky Spin this morning for Transition Tuesday, identifying healthy relationships. Before we jump straight into the presentation, we would like to go over a few housekeeping items. A little bit about Kentucky Spin or Kentucky Special Parent Involvement Network. We were funded by the U.S. Department of Education under IDEA since 1988 when Kentucky first received a PTI. Kentucky Spin Parent Center provides training, information, and support for children and youth with all types of disabilities, birth through 26 years old and beyond, their parents, families, as well as professionals that partner with the families and individuals. One thing that really makes Kentucky Spin unique is that all of the employees are either individuals with disabilities themselves or family members of a youth or an adult with a disability. So we always like to remind folks that when we say, we have walked in similar situations or we're continuing to walk through those situations, that we are. We understand and can definitely empathize with situations. A little disclosure about today's training. This is not a training of trainers event. Kentucky Spin does not authorize other agencies, organizations, or individuals to train this material. This presentation is for educational use only. Third-party recording or streaming is prohibited, and all rights for use are reserved by Kentucky Spin Incorporated. We do provide real-time closed captioning. There will be a link placed in the chat box today if you would like to utilize that. There will also be links to all materials for today's presentation placed in the chat box as well. If you're unable to grab that material, no worries. I will email all of the information shared today out to the participants within 24 hours. Also, if you have questions or comments, we do have a chat function and a Q&A section. Please feel free to put your questions in there. We will get to those as we see them, and we'll make sure that they're all answered by the end of today's presentation. At this time, I'm going to pass things over to David Rodriguez and Nick Carpenter so they can share a little bit about themselves with you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Davis Rodriguez. I am the transition age parent educator for here at Kentucky Spin. I am 35, father of four. I have autism. No, I don't. I apologize. I was just reading something else. I have ADHD and OCD and just a touch of ODD. And I've been an advocate for 8 years after my daughters were born and they were diagnosed with autism. And on to Nick.
Hi, I'm Nick Carpenter. I'm the one with autism. I am the youth educator for Kentucky Spin. I received an autism diagnosis and I was at the age of 4. I'm now the crisp age of 27, and I have been an advocate for the majority of my conscious life. Um, and I will be doing our presenting as usual on our Transition Tuesday topic, which is healthy relationships. Now, I will go ahead and just preface this. When we talk about relationships today, we're going to be talking about a bunch of different types of relationships. Maybe some types of relationships you haven't heard of before. I'm going to be going a little bit into detail of all these different types of relationships, how to identify them. Also, we're talking about bring up red flags and bad things to look out for in relationships. And just as kind of a warning ahead of time. I might briefly go over certain terms, but I'll make sure to let you aware of it before I start going into very briefly, we'll go into some tougher material related to healthy relationships. So firstly, relationships. Relationships are a big and necessary part of your life. We all have relationships, whether we know it or not. We all have some kind of interaction with another person, and that's ultimately what a relationship is. Relationships are can be beautiful things, they can be messy, they can be kind, they can be chaotic. Most importantly, they're worthwhile. Me myself, I've had throughout my life, I have had both successful and unsuccessful relationships. And I might have still, and I'm still not even perfect at this, but over time I have learned what healthy and unhealthy relationships look like for me. And I've had to overcome issues related to my disability that have caused barriers to relationships. So I kind of just want to go to here and help you all out with some of the things that I have learned. So, briefly going to go over all the types of relationships we're going to cover today. There's many types of relationships and many vague synonyms and similarities, but this is kind of like the core, like handful of types of relationships that we're going over today. So we're going to be talking about friendships, professional relationships, romantic relationships, parasocial relationships. Uh, and acquaintances. All of these relationships are different from the others. There's some similarities that kind of cross over, but these are ultimately kind of like this when we were doing our research. These were like the six kind of like most independent ones we could find. And being able to identify each of these different relationships and how they affect your life and what they mean to you is what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about friendships and acquaintances. I feel like these are kind of like the easiest ones to kind of go into. Friendships are is a type of relationship that you yourself choose to build, nurture, and develop with people around you. These are people that you willingly choose to interact with, whether it's at school, someone that you interact with outside of class or maybe during class sometimes. That you like maybe talk about things that you like with each other, like if there's certain video games you like playing, or if you're like maybe you have similar book interests or just things that you have similar hobbies, and also people that you might willingly go and interact with outside of a school setting or outside of work, wherever, like, like going to see movies together or playing video games online or all that kind of stuff. It's just people that you kind of people that you aren't related to, which I'll go into like what relations mean momentarily, but people that you choose to interact with regularly that you go out of your way to kind of see. Whereas acquaintances are relations with people who you might not consider friends. These are people that you might see occasionally, but someone that you might not see all the time and that you might not go out of your way to interact with. These are people that are like, people that you might just see at school. Like maybe you might say hi to them or interact with them occasionally. This might be a could be a coworker if you're employed. This could just be someone that you work with that you might see every day of the week just because you work a similar shift. But you might not necessarily go out of your way to talk to them. You might talk to them with like work stuff, and then that might come up. But again, isn't someone that you would go out of your way to see outside on a regular basis. Familial relationships are relationships that you are typically born into or that you might quote unquote legally form like over time. These are people like your parents, siblings, like your brothers and sisters, as well as aunts, uncles, and grandparents. Or if you're old enough and you get to that point of having like a spouse, like getting married and things like that. Like those are familial relationships. Very straightforward. It's people that you are legally one way or another related to. Um, Though I know there's some people who view familiar relationships as a bit more like they might view people they're not legally related to as family. That is also a thing, but that's getting a bit more into that, and that's not what the scope of this definition is. Parasocial relationships. This is a kind of a big one that I brought up myself a lot that I try to make people aware of because this is kind of a bit of a this can be a dangerous relationship to be involved in. But a parasocial relationship is kind of like a one-sided relationship. It's you, like maybe there's a person you really like, or maybe there's like an internet celebrity, or it could even be a person that you know personally, that you kind of like, not obsessive, but someone that you really like because either make YouTube videos that you find enjoyable, or they're like a Twitch streamer or something, and you like the games they play. And a parasocial relationship is when you put a lot of your own stuff, like money or time, etc., into that relationship, but it's not a two-way street. It's you putting all of this stuff into it and that kind of being it. So it can be really dangerous because sometimes people will just like there's adults who will just throw their money away at like online people who, the back and forth. These people online don't really know you exist, like these celebrities or these professional like content creators or whoever they are, these online people or wherever they may be, don't really know that you exist, and they might not care that you exist because, especially if they're popular, they might have hundreds and thousands of other people that support their content and like their content. So it's like, so you throwing your money and putting money into it is very much like that is just you putting things into the relationship. You're not getting anything back out of it. And that's kind of like it's a bit confusing. Parasocial has a lot of stuff that goes into it. I recommend looking a little more into it if you want to be more wary of it, but that is basically a parasocial relationship. Now we'll talk about professional relationships. Professional relationships can include interactions with coworkers, doctors and cashiers, um, as well as just any kind of like employment situation. These individuals might be friendly to you, but they're not necessarily your friends, acquaintances, or family members. Their relationships with you is based on their professional role at that moment. So this includes, if you have like a psychiatrist or a therapist, or if you have to regularly just go to a doctor for whatever reason, that is a professional relationship. You see each other because you have a professional need that needs to be taken care of, and they are in a position to provide for you. Um, and sometimes you can be friends with these people. Like I mentioned in the script, I mentioned coworkers. You can have a friendship with a coworker, but it's typically a professional relationship is in the environment of a work environment. Like someone is providing a work service for you based on whatever factors that might be present, and that's what makes it a professional relationship. And in romantic relationships are connections you have with a significant other. That could be like a boyfriend, girlfriend, um, something else, or it could be like just having a romantic relationship. It also involves spouses, people that you spend a lot more like intimate time with. So now I'm going to go slightly off topic here. We're going to take what might seem like a break from relationships, but it actually is still relevant, and I'll go into why. I'm going to take a moment to talk about birds. This is going to seem completely distracting, but it's all right. It's fine. It'll be educational. So this is just kind of like a random fun fact when we were looking at like healthy relationships and we are looking into just kind of just interesting things to bring up about it. Davis and I started looking at birds and kind of just bird stuff. And we just wanted to share a couple of interesting things that we learned about birds, specifically Kentucky state bird, the northern cardinal. So we learned that currently there are 19 different northern cardinal species, which I was completely kind of taken off guard by that. And also that contrary to what I knew, not all northern cardinals are red. They can be a lot of different colors. Some of them can be orange, yellows, and pinks. And the reason that their feathers are these different colors is because of depends on the food and kind of the location that they live in. Depends on like the type of berries they eat, bugs and seeds and all that gradually shade their feathers over time. And I didn't know that there was this many species of cardinals before we randomly stumbled across this. I thought there was just the red and brown ones, which is just a gender thing. I didn't know that there was like all these different colors of them. Um, and I guess kind of like the reason why this is relevant and we bring this up is that like humans, like us, birds are one of the few species slash animals on the planet that develop lifelong relationships. Now we're going to talk about what goes into a healthy relationship. So, what is a healthy relationship? Well, healthy relationships are equal and respectful. with a balance of give and take. Neither side should have full control or outweigh the other's opinions. So this just means that if when whatever the relationship is, be it a friend, significant other, whatever it may be, that you both have a equal interaction into it. Like you're both putting things into it and you're both getting things out of it. And you both have a kind of a mutual respect and treat each other the way that you would expect them to treat you, I should say. I would almost say treat each other nicely, but I know there's some friendships where, they're kind of mean to each other, but that's kind of part of the friendship. So I'm not necessarily going to say it, but typically how you treat each other should be a mutual understanding that that is how you're going to treat each other in that relationship. Well, healthy relationships are also meaningful. This means that they have a purpose. There's a reason that you're in that relationship. Typically, you don't just form a relationship just so it exists. There's usually something that goes, there's usually always something that goes into it that you might not even be aware of. Um, like people you're friends with. There's reasons you're friends with them. You're typically not just friends with someone. There's usually some kind of, like I mentioned earlier, some kind of mutual interest in that friendship, whether it be liking similar games, liking the same movies, reading the same type of books, or you just like each other's personalities. You just like kind of just how that person is. So you like hanging out with them a lot. Healthy relationships are also mindful of what others are feeling and needing, as well as their boundaries. This is kind of what I just mentioned about how just kind of like a mutual respect and a mutual understanding of how you're going to treat each other. Being aware that in a relationship, you and the people that you know have your own boundaries. You have ways that you expect to be treated, and you have lines that you expect to not be crossed. Um, like you might like I said like you might have a friendship where you joke around with each other a lot and you say funny stuff, but you might not necessarily like it if your friend starts making jokes about your mom. That might be something that you're not okay with, and that is a boundary, for example, and that is a boundary that someone should respect, even if you're in kind of like a jokey, like haha type friendship. So now we're going to talk about unhealthy relationships. Because boy howdy, do there be unhealthy relationships. And you might be wondering this time, why do I need to know all this stuff? Or you might even be thinking, I'm good. I know what a good relationship is. Well, you might not know this, but according to Claire Barnett at the ACL Administration for Community Living blog on the ACL.gov website, more than 1 in 10 high school students surveyed by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reported experiencing, and this is again, I mentioned earlier about kind of like a content thing. We're going in unhealthy relationships, so I'm going to briefly talk about some kind of like uh, maybe some very quickly some uncomfortable stuff here. But the CDC have reported 1 in 10 high school students experiencing physical or sexual violence from a dating partner. Data from the Department of Justice suggests even greater risks for youth with disabilities. More than 1 in 5 young people with disabilities between the ages of 12 and 19 reports experiencing violence, including physical abuse, rape, or sexual assault from a stranger or partner, more than twice the rate of youth without a disability. People of all ages with disabilities are more likely to face violence from an intimate partner. And women and girls with any type of disability, as well as people with a cognitive disability, face the highest rates of violence. That I know that from uh, my own experiences and from what I've heard from other people, it's very easy to, especially if you have certain, like if your disability is kind of learning related or even socially related, it's very easy to be taken advantage of in a lot of different situations. And it's can be easy if you're not aware of these things or aware of red flags, which I'll be going into red flags momentarily. It's very easy to kind of end up in a bad spot. Um, Physically and socially, it's possible to be in places you don't want to be in. Um, and also it's a thing of like you might be you yourself, because I've kind of presented this from like your point of view. It's also very easy because even though you might know, uh, you might know what constitutes a healthy relationship. You might feel, you might think that you're like, oh, I can tell if this person's being bad or not. And that's good if you can. But a lot of times people don't realize that they themselves are a problem, that they themselves are causing issues, which is why we're going to go into red flags and all that here momentarily. Because a lot of times, uh, from what I have researched and from my own personal experiences, I have seen people with disabilities who they themselves have instigated bad situations and not realize and not been doing it consciously with intention. It's something that they just may not have realized was a problem when they were doing it. So it's important that to go over all this because this is the type of stuff that can forever ruin the rest of your life. So let's go over what healthy relationships should not have in them, what are not part of healthy relationships, starting with verbally abusive. Verbally abusive is a range of words or behaviors used to manipulate and maintain power and control over someone. This is just things like, it can be things like name calling, or if you have you know someone who might curse you out, or they might make fun of you, or they might call you slurs based off your disability or based off other minorities that you may be included in. Basically just using words and behaviors to demean you and make you feel worse in order to kind of have a control over you. Sexually abusive, an act of sexual contact that a person suffers, submits to, participates in, or performs as a result of force or violence, or through threats, fear, or deception, or without having consented to the act. Sexual abuse is any unwanted sexual contact, which means there is no consent involved. Consent, when it comes to that, consent is very important. And you have physical abuse. Physical abuse is an intentional bodily injury, things like slapping, pinching, choking, kicking, shoving, or inappropriately using drugs or physical restraints. Emotional abuse, a type of abuse that involves repeated attempts to make someone feel bad about themselves or doubt the reality or disability. It includes verbal and nonverbal behaviors. There's a term that kind of got a bit popular on the internet the past couple years you may be familiar with, called gaslighting. Gaslighting is a part of emotional abuse. It's where you or someone will say things to someone to make them doubt things that actually happened. Uh, like telling someone to go and, as a, just a simple example, telling someone to go and get you something, and then when they bring it to you, being like, "Oh, I didn't actually ask for this. I don't know why you think I told you to get this." That's an example of gaslighting, making them doubt what they think has happened or have been told. Um, Healthy relationships aren't neglectful, which is failing to give attention or deliver proper care. They're also not one-sided, which is where, as I mentioned with like the parasocial stuff earlier, is a situation where one person invests more time, energy, or effort than the other. And then they're also not exploitative, just using a situation or person in an unfair or selfish way, as well as uncommunicative. Uh, Healthy relationships need communication. You need to be able to speak with the people that you're friends with or professionally associated with, or your spouses, partners, whoever they may be. You need to be able to communicate your problems and what's going on to them. If you're unwilling to talk or impart information, that can cause issues later on in that relationship. They're also not financially abusive, which is when a partner or caregiver steals or withholds money or borrows possessions without permission. This quick safety warning is because this is something I always hear about happening all the time. If you're engaging with someone new online, someone that you don't know, someone that you've just met through the internet, whether it be through like Discord or through if you're like playing a game online or if you're on like Facebook or Instagram, whatever, if you're on any kind of like online platform and you're engaging with someone on that platform that you do not know in person, always verify their age and that they are who they say they are. This is a very serious issue. People do lie. People lie about their age all the time. And this might not be something that's a super concern if you're in high school right now and you're like 17 or 18. This might not be a concern. But when you get to like your mid 20s, like where I am, you don't want to be talking to someone who's secretly 15 years old on the other side of the computer. Because that is something that even if nothing happens, even if nothing is engaged, that is something that can and will ruin the rest of your life. This is a very serious issue, something that you should be careful of. Me, myself personally, and with my own experience, I just don't talk to people I don't know on the internet. Or if I do, I'm very reserved. I do not like, but I'm also at a point in my life, I have my circle of friends too. So I have people that I engage with, who I know who they are. But I just at the point I'm in my life, I don't risk that stuff myself. I don't talk to people online because you don't know how old they are and you don't know what kind of motives they have, all that. So again, it's a very serious issue that shouldn't be taken lightly, and again, has lifelong consequences. Now we're going into some red flags, which a red flag is, if you don't know, is a sign or an indication, a symbol that something is bad. So jealousy, jealousy in a relationship can be common, and isn't immediately a bad thing. But when someone is excessively jealous, which it can be harmful to a relationship. And jealousy is just like, if you let's say you have like a girlfriend or boyfriend or spouse or whatever, and you go and you hang out with someone like you and like your friend like go see a movie, and then you come back and then your significant other or partner or whoever is like, well, I wanted to go see that movie. I don't like that you went and saw that movie with them. That could be kind of a sign of jealousy. It's also controlling behavior, where when partner controls and decides what their partner can or can't do. One moment, may get a drink. Oh. Excuse me. But yeah, controlling behavior. Someone controls and decides what their partner can or can't do. Love bombing. Love bombing involves overwhelming someone with affection and gifts to gain their trust and dependence quickly. So like just buying things, giving a bunch of stuff to someone because you want them to like you, um, can be seen kind of bad. And again, I mentioned this, lack of communication. We all know, again, communication is a key pillar in any relationship. Um, and it can be kind of a maybe not an immediate like big problem thing, but if you notice that your partner or friend, if they seem absent or they seem like they're not really listening to you when you're conversing, that's a sign that something's going on. It might not necessarily be your fault, but that can just be an indication that something is happening with them that you might need to investigate. We have relationship rushing. Relationship rushing is when the person rushes a new relationship forward way too quickly. Um, like this could be like, just trying to like if you're like dating someone and them just trying to push certain steps of the dating process very quickly because they want to get to certain stages of it very rapidly. That can be kind of a little concerning. They might also try to drive a wedge between you and your family and friends. They might try to kind of make it to where you're only interacting with them because they don't want you to interact with your parents or her family or your other friends because they just want you to be hanging out with them. And then lastly, we have manipulation, which is where someone controls or influences another person to get what they want, and it's usually unfair and dishonest. Manipulation, I mentioned gaslighting earlier, that's another form of manipulation. Very big, can be a very big red flag if you notice something like that happening, like someone blatantly lying to you or telling you that things aren't the way that you think they are. It can be kind of a red flag. I guess that can be kind of a big deal. All right, so how to get help? So if you are in a relationship and you kind of and you go back and maybe you look at some of these red flags and some of these signs and you kind of some of them seem kind of familiar to you, you should reach out to someone you trust. This could be a teacher, a caregiver, a family member, or a counselor or mentor. Or you can call the National Domestic Hotline at 800 799 7233 or text 88788. So now what are the key takeaways? There's a lot of types of relationships that you will have throughout your lifespan. These relationships can add meaning or they can hinder you. The important thing to take away today is how to identify the difference and how to get help when you need to. So just these 3 bullet points. Identify your types of relationships, know what those relationships are, evaluate those relationships, understand what you're getting from them and what value they have, and then being able to knowing how to get help and support when you need it.
Hey Nick, you do have a question in the
Okay.
chat box that says, do scams count as manipulation?
They can. That's a context thing. But scams definitely are a form of manipulation. I feel like because I think it's safe to say that scams can be bad. Um, uh, and you can, and even because sometimes I feel like people try to scam all the time. People send out emails and all that, trying to get people to give them money. Scams can come from people like we mentioned like relationship rushing earlier, just a little while ago. Someone could just kind of show up, and someone you may even know, like at school or in the workplace, someone you never really talked to, might just come up to you and suddenly start trying to be friendly with you, just trying to be friends. And maybe their intention isn't, sometimes people want to be friends and develop relationships for not good intentions. Their intention could just be that, they think you have money and they want to try and get money out of you. Or, they might be trying to manipulate you to get money for something or to get you to do something for them. So yeah, scamming can definitely be a form of manipulation that can come up.
And I also would like to say when looking at scams also, it is a world of social media and digital platforms. And that is something to also be aware of when you're interacting with friendship relationships or romantic relationships in a social media style or online. Understanding that they may not be real people that you're talking to, or may not be the person they say they are when you're talking to them. So that is another form of scam that can be manipulation as well.
Also too, since we're talking on the topic of it, mentioning parasocial relationships earlier, this might not be necessarily seen specifically as a scam, but mentioning like people like on I know a lot like on Twitch, which is a website where people can stream like live stream games or other stuff. And like YouTube, you can also stream on YouTube. A lot of these streaming sites have like membership things where you can pay like money, when typically, like, it's not that big of a deal because you might get like cool benefits, like you might get like extra videos and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a lever. But a lot of like streamers and other things will be like, oh, if you give me like $50 a month, you'll get a gold pin next to your name. Whenever you put something in the chat box, you'll get a gold pin showing that you're one of my top supporters. And that can be kind of, that's kind of, you might not need to do that. Like that could be kind of scammy, like someone. That's why parasocials are kind of, you want to be careful with the parasocial stuff because like, do you really need to be giving this guy on the internet $50 a month when you could like be buying like a video game or getting like an or getting some more groceries or something like that? Like, do you really need to be giving this guy on the internet $50 a month for a gold pin next to your name? Um, but yeah. So here, no further questions. This is an infograph that we have on the Kentucky Spin website. Well, two infographs that we have on the Kentucky Spin website going over which the links are in the presentation, so you'll be able to access them directly, or you can find them on the Kentucky Spin website. That involve to go over the 6 different types of relationships, kind of what I just talked about earlier, but with kind of written out descriptions a bit more, as well as just going over friendships and how to be able to identify different friendships. And then for this one, we have our identifying your relationships infograph, where this is just kind of like a handy thing to have where you can just kind of write out. You can kind of just think about people you interact with and you can just write them out and have them kind of on this reference. Where you can think about people you know, people you like to spend time with, and you can just kind of put them here on the sheet. So you're physically aware. You have a physical reference to the people that you interact with. And I think at this point, I'm going to hand it back over to Amber.
Thanks, Nick. Oh, thanks, Nick. I was trying to come off mute. I appreciate that. We do want to thank everyone for coming today to join us on our Transition Tuesday to discuss relationships. With that being said, you will see a QR code on the screen and a link. You will also receive the link to the evaluation in the follow-up email that will be sent out with all materials from today. We do ask that you take a moment and fill the evaluation out for several reasons. First and foremost, being we value each and every one of you. And we want to make sure that we are hearing the needs that you have that you want to hear about. What is it you'd like to learn more about? If there was something you have questions on about today's presentation, please let us know. If there's something that you would like us to elaborate a little bit more on, we want to hear that. We want to hear everything. We value your opinion, and we want to make sure we're reaching the needs of everyone across our state. Also, if you have any questions and you need to reach out to us for one-on-one assistance for yourself or someone you're working with, our contact information is on the screen. And as always, we encourage everyone to sign up for our e-news as well as our social media platforms, where you will get the latest and the greatest events as they roll out. And once again, we just want to thank you for coming and spending some time with us.